Hey guys, it's Mari Juliet here with the Evolution of Confidence, and I am sitting down with the Chief Empowerment Officer, the CEO of The Rose Grows, Raina, and we are going to talk to Raina about how she got out of her nonprofit job and into her own position and running her own business. So this is the epitome of the evolution of confidence. This is showing how you can kind of change your situation and use all of your values that you bring to the table to your own business and start your own journey. So here we have Raina, and I'm going to start by asking you to kind of give us a little summary of what you were doing before and how it kind of segued into what you're doing now.
Totally. Mari, thanks for having me on the show. We're coming to you from the Living Green lunch table.
Boca Raton.
Yes. And I think before I tell the listeners about what I do, I think the way that I met you is like so freaking hilarious. And I get so much mileage out of this story.
Yeah,
So
seriously.
I met Mari at a bikini shoot. I've never modeled bikinis in my life, and I didn't even know that it was going to be a photo shoot for bikinis until I got there. And everybody there...
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
I had no idea. Bianca was just like, hey, do you want to be in a photo shoot?
Yeah.
Our mutual friend who's a trainer. So I'm thinking like, okay, she needs like shots of her training me in the gym. And then I get this email that's like, please bring this, and this for the photo shoot tomorrow. And I'm like, you know what? I've never modeled bathing suits before, but like, let's do this. I got some things waxed, went rollerblading with my butt cheeks out, got the logo of the company put on my nails, showed up with roses and sneakers.
That. I was like, you really committed. Like, you went all out for that.
Yes. And the best part was, so in the corner, I remember you came up to me and you were like, so, as I'm eating like shrimp salad, you're like, so, are you a model? And I looked at you, Mari, and I go, yes, I'm a role model for children. I speak to kids for a living.
Oh my God, I love it.
And we've been buds ever since.
Yeah, I mean, that one meeting, it was for Poema Swim. I met
like
so
3
many
years
cool
ago.
people there. It was like amazing, and it was so random.
And we're all still friends, even though most of us have never hung out since the shoot.
Exactly. Do you know how many people I've met in those scenarios where it's just like a bunch of random people together? In this case, it was a bunch of women. And we were talking about like what makes us feel beautiful, and like it was all about female empowerment.
Right.
And it really, like, every woman that was there now, like almost all of them have their own business, and I've still kept in contact with them, which is amazing. It's like crazy how much you can gain just from getting together. Like
totally.
that.
And I think also the biggest lesson there is, we choose how we show up. So even, if you meet somebody one time, whether it's a client you're showing a house or it's like some random funny chick from the bikini shoot, or for me, people I've met on planes throughout the years.
Yeah.
Social media is this opportunity to like extend that relationship in a way that like, I haven't seen you since the photo shoot, but I feel like I know everything about your life.
Exactly. I have the chills because I think there's such a narrative about social media that's like so negative, has a negative connotation where it's like, oh, we don't talk to each other, we're on our phones in public, but there are so many positive connections that I've made through social media, and I'm sure you have too. And like you said, it like keeps you in contact with that person that where if there wasn't social media, we probably would have never talked. I mean, to be honest,
to keep in touch, 100%.
And it's like I love knowing what you're doing because I know that you're like changing so many people's lives, and I really want to talk about what exactly it is you do for kids. And I know you were working in the nonprofit more, based on children. What are you doing now kind of like to carry that on?
Totally. So I graduated college in 2015. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and my whole dream was, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to study business, I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to go into politics. But once I got to college, I wasn't prepared to be bullied for my faith.
Wow,
Boca is such a Jewish city. There's more Jewish people here in Boca than there is in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
And
I believe that.
And I had lived in Israel in between high school and college, which honestly, I have to tell you as a woman, I never thought I was ugly, but I never knew I was hot until I was 18, living in Israel, dressing how I wanted, making my own decisions,
That's
like
amazing.
not living under like the shadow of like, my brothers in this like little Jewish community where everybody knew me.
Right.
And so for me, I think, you know, Israel later became a really big part of my profession when I went into the nonprofit world. But to be honest, had it not impacted me so much as a woman in terms of my confidence in the life that I was able to design for myself and being accepted for what I said and how I said things, when I got to college and people started, you know, saying things about Israel and saying things about my faith, it was more of a personal thing because of those experiences.
Right.
So that's honestly what motivated me to really get educated, because, you know, my grandparents survived the Holocaust, but I didn't actually know their story.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though people were saying things to me that I knew weren't true, I just knew from my experience it wasn't true. I didn't informationally know.
Right. You didn't have like the stats behind it to really back up. And that's kind of like what's super important in defending your own beliefs or defending somebody else. It's like you have to have so much information to back up what you're saying.
Totally.
And it's kind of interesting that you gain that confidence being kind of outside of your comfort zone, but in some way, like you probably felt like you were home being in Israel. Like, like this is supporting what my background is, because I think some people don't feel connected to their nationality, you know, unless they're like living it day to day, unless you're Hispanic and you're speaking Spanish day to day with your parents. Like my dad's from South America and I don't feel, you know, as connected to that part of my like heritage as I would like to be. So I feel like immersing yourself into that country as a whole is like amazing. That probably really changed your life.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing I can take from that too for the listeners is that it was through embracing my story and really like learning my history that I was able to create opportunities for myself, where in college I was able to travel around the country and go to conferences to learn more and meet really awesome people who could tell me about, you know, trips to go back to Israel. So in college, I realized like I don't just like flirting with Israeli boys, but I really like teaching people about Israel. And I started this huge movement. And in 2015, my passion became my career, where for 4 years I was working as a mentor and a speaker with high school students all over the Southeast. And I'd have to say the biggest thing I learned from that, from going to college to the professional world, is in college, I used to get really offended when people would say things that went against my values. And I used to think like, oh my God, I need to like blow this person up. Everybody needs to know what they said. But after working with kids, a lot of times when teens say something that, you know, is hateful, you don't know what they saw on TikTok. You don't know what their parents say at home. And a lot of times it's just coming from a place of miseducation. So I realize like now more than ever, especially with what's going on in the country right now, we have to have conversations with people, and especially if people have a differing opinion than us, then I want to challenge you to be the one to listen first and ask that person questions to figure out, why do you think the way that you do?
That is the biggest question that I often have when I talk to people who do have those like really strong beliefs against another religion or against another person in general. It's like, why is it the way? You know, I understand that it's like your upbringing and all this stuff, but why aren't you more open to learning about why it is you feel that way? Because that's really what emotional intelligence is for yourself. It's like tapping into, instead of just saying, this is the way I grew up and this is how I'm going to be and this is who I am, it's like, what more emotional growth can you have than looking into your prejudices and why it is that you hate something so much or hate a person so much? Because how can one whole group of people be so horrible? They're you know, there's good and bad in the world, but I don't think as one whole group, like you can just look at a group and say, this is what you are.
Exactly.
And like if somebody looked at you like that, the person who feels that way, how would you feel? You know, if somebody generalized you based on something, and you know, of how you grew up. And there's so many beautiful things that come with, you know, how you grew up. So and I love that you're sharing that with people, because I think that there's such a lack of awareness when it comes to the prejudices against Jewish people. Especially down here, like you're saying, like there's so many Jewish people in Boca, but there's still so many people that have this like weird prejudice, and it doesn't really make sense to me. And I think you're probably one of those people too, where it's like, what is the sense behind that hate? You know?
It's you know, it's something that's been around, unfortunately, for thousands of years. Where it gets interesting for me in America is I have to recognize I'm a white woman.
Right.
So I've never really experienced discrimination for being white.
Right.
I have experienced discrimination for being female, but really when it comes to like experiencing like racism, it came from me being Jewish. And a lot of times people look at Jews and they think that we're all white, and the truth is we're not.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, my dad is Jewish and he's from South America, like I said. So it's like totally, and I think what young people need to understand is like, it's not a shameful thing. Like you shouldn't be saying like you're ashamed, because with other forms of racism, it's like overt, you know, like you can see it right in front of you, but you have to really like delve into somebody's past to know more about them, to know that they are of that religion.
Exactly.
And stuff. So it's,
and it's almost like there's this challenge in America of like when you fill in the bubble, when you take standardized test, it's like, okay, I'm supposed to only fit into the narrative of the people who are listed on here, right? So for example, as a Jewish person, like I put Caucasian, but like I don't identify as like a white person.
Right. Yeah, you have like this whole other history behind your life and like your upbringing that is totally you know, unique.
And without going so into politics, I think that's also part of the challenge with politics is it's not about issues. It's like I just have to fill in a bubble between like each of these organizations.
Right.
And in doing so, like...
And there's nothing that divides us more than that.
Exactly.
Because it's like, this is, you know, this is how I grew up, this is who I am, and that's who you are. You know, it's like totally separating the two, which is not how the human race works, you know?
Exactly. Like to understand each other doesn't mean that we have to agree.
Yes.
I'll tell you, like one of my friends, Denise, like said it really beautifully last week. She's like, you know, for some of the people who are in my social feed, I'll post pictures of my family on the boat. I'll post pictures of things I cook for dinner, and they won't comment. But if I post something that politically goes against what they believe, all of a sudden, even people I didn't even know who had opposing political beliefs of mine are commenting all these not nice things like on my post. And she just kind of made the point, like, if you don't regularly post on my feed, what gives you the right to post on just the political ones?
To all of a sudden have this big opinion on my life, you know, like that. And it is, there's part, you know, people can make the argument of, oh, you're putting your life out there, like you should be open to the criticism, but to be honest, why is it so normalized to criticize somebody based on those things? And which we can't control. We can't control how we grew up or what our nationality is. There's nothing that we can control about that. So why is that the biggest you know, thing that you can point against somebody? It doesn't make any sense. So,
totally.
So what are like some of the messages that like we can share with the audience about what you teach the children in high school and like how they can kind of build their own confidence in their nationalities?
Totally. So I think number one, it's important to always be nice to people.
Yeah. Even
in situations like where you're upset. In Tennessee, we have an expression that you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
Absolutely.
And have you ever heard that expression, Mari, where people are like, oh, the only reason they got that job was like because who they know. It's who they know.
100%.
So what I like to tell people, it's not who they know, it's who knows you. If you don't make a first impression, you don't keep in touch with people, then they're not going to be willing to support you or help you in the future when you really need them. Like you can follow 1 million people on Instagram in 2020. Just because you follow them doesn't mean that they follow you.
Right.
And it's important.
That's a really good point.
And it's just, it's really important to always be authentic and come from like a place of compassion.
Right.
You know, for example, like I'm working on this children's book, and we'll talk more about it in the episode, but I met this amazing man in Miami, and his family, they're printing the book, and all of a sudden he disappeared. Yeah, and all of a sudden though, at the beginning of the process, he disappeared. And I was like, what the heck? I'm like, where did he go?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I had all these plans and I didn't hear from him for like a week and a half, and I was starting to get worried because I was supposed to already get the samples, and, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got all these like deadlines. So I go to call him, and in my head, I wanted to be a bitch. I wanted to be mad and be like, what's that deal?
Like,
you know?
what the hell?
But literally in my head, before I like uttered out the words, I was like, Raina, like, be nice. Like, it's not on brand.
Oh,
and I was
God.
nice. And I'm so glad that I was nice, because he texted me 2 days later and he was like, I'm really sorry. I had a heart attack last week. I had to go in for surgery.
Wow.
Mind you, the book is about my dead dad, who I think also had a heart attack.
Wow.
And here this man is like, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
like, he's like, I'm
unbelievable.
going in, or he said, I'm going in for surgery tomorrow morning. I'm like, I can't believe you're texting me right now.
Thank God you didn't come at him with like an accusatory way, because I think that's a huge lesson. I mean, I'm gonna write that down, because like I love that you said not being compassionate isn't on brand.
It's
like,
just not.
Being kind is on brand for you, which is amazing. Like, I'm obsessed with that, because there's so many times in my work too where I'm like about to because you think these scenarios in your head, like especially if you don't hear from somebody, you don't hear from a client, it's like, okay, they've gone to somebody else, they're doing this, they're doing that, they've moved on, they hate me, they can't stand me, and then you message them and you hear back from them and they have nothing but nice things to say. So it's like being compassionate to them instead of focusing on what you could have done wrong or what's going, in the scenarios in your head is an amazing lesson. It's like, turn it around and be kind to that person and say, hey, like, is there anything you need from me?
Right.
Or like, how are you doing today? Something completely, don't even talk about the book. It's like, how are you doing today?
You're right. It's almost like by being nice, you're forcing yourself from the spiral.
Yes.
Like, I swear, one of the like most popular Facebook posts I ever wrote was like at the beginning of COVID, my friend's mom had sent me this like $300 like Starbucks gift card. So I was like going there every day, even though like I just drink Maxwell House hot in the car 3 days black. I don't care, But I got addicted to Starbucks real fast, because I would pull up. There's like a 20-minute line. I'm like, oh, it's okay. It'll go by real fast.
Exactly. When you have like 5 minutes to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And can always justify Starbucks.
Oh, and there's nothing worse than being late to a meeting, but you walk in with that little white cup, and people are like, oh, right.
And there's so much
you hit
shame,
traffic.
But there's also none, because you're like, the addiction is real. You can't.
Yeah, it's kind of like a universal, like a thumbs up. It's like, oh, okay, you had to get the coffee.
I knew you needed your juice,
Yeah, like God forbid you got in a car accident, we'd be pissed. But you got coffee, it's
fine.
Got
coffee, so you're good.
Yeah. So I'm waiting in line. I'm about to pull in because it's my turn. And these two women, probably in their 30s, they cut me off and like get in the drive-through line before me after I'd been waiting there forever. And I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to like jump out of their car, like the pink Power Ranger, and rip their freaking rear view mirror off of it and dance around with it. But after like 10 seconds, I was like, I don't want to feel this anger.
Yeah.
And immediately I was like, I'm going to buy them coffee. And it's kind of like what we just said. Like, by me deciding I was going to do something nice, it prevented me from spiraling.
And it could have ruined your day.
Oh, 100%. And when I pulled up to the window at Starbucks, they thought it was so great. They split it with me. They, like, told me all these nice things.
Yeah.
So had I not, thought about, like, what's something nice I can do in this situation, I probably would have gone around all day being miserable to other people, because I would have been pissed from these two girls.
And spreading that narrative, too. It's like, instead of spreading the narrative of, oh, I had a great discussion with people at Starbucks that said all these great things, it's like, oh, this bitch or whatever.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And it's like the difference between that pivot.
Yeah.
You literally went from you depleting your vial to you filling your vial with positivity.
100%.
That's like amazing. I love that, because so many people need to learn that, including me. It's like, so everything's about your mindset and like the way that you can pivot, and like learning to doing that on a smaller scale. Like, I love to know how you navigate this, like, kindness, because on a smaller scale is the way to really make that happiness for your whole life, I think.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that statement. Some of the ways I navigate like happiness and like being kind of on a small scale is like I always have stickers in my purse. And
little
I love
peace sign stickers.
Yeah, and I love giving them out to like little kids and like ripping off a section and teaching them how to share.
That's
sometimes
so cute.
If there's like, like a special needs adult, at Publix, it's fun to like make them feel inclusive.
That's awesome.
The best present you can ever give anybody, and it's so cheap. I always have postage stamps in my purse, because when you travel, a postcard is literally the cheapest thing that you could ever buy somebody. you write them a little note, you drop it in the mailbox. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
you cared
You
enough
thought
about
about
me
me.
to
Yeah.
buy a stamp, buy a card, and put it in the mailbox. And I've just found, like, when I meet, professional contacts, I'll send it to their kids, or if there's a
That's
guy that
awesome.
I'm dating, I like to send him little things in the mail.
I love that.
And-
I love that.
and I have-
because it does take so much effort to do that.
Oh, totally. And the funniest thing is, like, I typically date older guys, so I love being this little millennial being like, check the mail.
You're like, check your snail mail. They're like, wait, where's my text? It's like, no. Snail mail is the way to go.
100%.
I love snail mail. Like, if I have to say, I'm like, I'm not paying online. I go,
It's the greatest
snail
thing.
mail.
Yeah. And I think also too, like in business, like with any of your clients, like everybody likes a note. Like for me, I'm about to do this Kickstarter with my book, and mark my words, listeners, I have everyone's contact information, and I'm going to personally send them a note. Thank you so much for agreeing to pre-order my book. I love this about you.
That's amazing.
Here's the link, because
I love that.
when people support you, like you really have to like make sure that those people know that they matter, because life is so
100%.
short.
It's true, and like I once talked to this agent, and it was like about taking the days off, like on holidays and stuff like that. And she's like, no, I put that's the days that I work the hardest, because I'm like trying to give back thanks to my clients, which is huge. I mean, even the tiniest thing, like I used to drop off these little boxes of candy with a note saying, thank you for choosing me as your realtor, even if they hadn't.
Right,
it's like,
right.
It's like putting that out into the universe, and then making them happy in the process. So like, I feel like with everything being so instant now, like for some people that are go all the time and like always about work, you forget to do those little like kind things, like a written note and all that stuff. So picking up on that, we were just talking about how making those small conscious efforts to show your clients and show the people in your life that you're thinking of them are huge. Like every time I get a handwritten little note, and a lot of times it will be from my own clients, and I'm like, wow, they really like appreciate me more on a deeper level.
Exactly.
And that's what you're saying when you do those things.
Yeah, and everybody can pick a different thing. Like I know it used to drive my old boss crazy, but like when I would meet with professional contacts, I would always bring them a bouquet of roses from Publix. My name is Raina Rose. I love giving roses. Like that's just like my thing. And I'll never forget one time I brought roses to an administrator, Mari, and she started bawling. She was like, I lost my husband like 2 years ago. Nobody has given me flowers like since the funeral.
My gosh,
and like I really
amazing.
appreciate it.
That's amazing. Like you can change somebody's life and day and everything like by those little things.
Just
And
by
it's-
being nice.
Just by being nice, and like what, and it's for you, it's like this is just a small thing that I can do, for somebody else, but it's like it does take time out of your day, and people do understand that and do appreciate that extra step, for sure. So let's talk about your new book, The Girl Who Said Hello to Everyone. Okay, I love this. The other day I was showing somebody houses in the car, and I waved at this guy doing lawn work, and he's like, did you just wave at that guy? I'm like, I wave at everybody.
Yes.
Like, I want, and if they don't wave at me, I'm like, what the hell's your problem?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I think it's the best,
And I love
especially
complimenting
now.
women.
Oh my God, complimenting is the
If
best.
you're a woman who can't take a compliment from another woman, you got some confidence issues we got to work on right there.
Exactly. Yeah, don't return the compliment of like, oh no, I look horrible. It's like appreciate the compliment and like appreciate that person giving it to you.
Exactly.
And being genuine when you accept it, I think.
So important.
So tell me, now this is dedicated to people in your family, and I know that you said you lost your dad, and I'm sorry to hear that. So
I appreciate that.
what kind of lessons have you brought out of like that heartache and that loss?
Totally.
How have you been able to turn that into a positive for yourself?
Right. So first of all, when we write, our feelings really filter our words. And when my dad had first died, I wrote this poem about him, and I just kind of tucked it away. And my whole life was like changed, obviously, when that happened.
Right.
And, I really, at first I was working so hard, I didn't really like get to like grieve him.
Okay, yeah.
But this last year, going out on my own as an entrepreneur and life slowing down, and especially then when COVID hit, life got especially challenging again. So I found myself pulling out my journal, and I finished this poem about things I learned from my dad, just the importance of saying hi to everybody, and greeting people, even if they're, if they're different, old, young, or an animal. And I reached out to a girlfriend who I haven't seen since 5th grade. She was always like a really good doodler.
Okay.
And I hit her up and I was just like, hey, like, would you be interested in illustrating this poem into a kid's book about my dad? And she's like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do that. Like, I'm down. And what's crazy is after she said yes, Mari, her name is Allie, but her birth name is actually Alan. And that was my late father's name. And I realized it immediately when she was like, yes, I'd love to do it. So I went into the bathroom, I looked in the mirror, and I was like, Raina Rose, you better fucking follow through on this project. And now you're holding my prototype.
Oh my, I have the chills. That is amazing, that story.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. And it's just as simple as you reaching out to that person,
I secretly hated her because she got to be Minnie Pearl in the Tennessee play and I didn't. And she was also student council president and all these years.
Like, what the hell?
I was like, and then when I told her about it, she was like, they made me Minnie Pearl because I had the most Southern accent in 4th grade. I'm like, no, they didn't. She's like, Raina, they told me that's why I was Minnie Pearl.
But then it's like now you probably have this great friendship.
Oh my God, I'm going to her wedding in 2 weeks. It says her new maiden name is like on the cover of the book.
And this is legit. Like, guys, this is a printed book. And when is it going to be available?
So it's going to be going live on Kickstarter next week. For more information, you can go to therosegrows.com. I'll be posting about it on social, be doing lives with a lot of my friends. And
I love this. This is awesome. And it's just a message, and the same thing, like sharing kindness and not just thinking about what you can get out of somebody or relationships. It's like, how can we work on stuff together?
Exactly.
And I think that's like a huge reason why we're sitting here today. Like, we're both have that mindset of like, how can we just collaborate with each other and like create the success within the people that we already know?
Totally.
Because you don't have to outsource everything.
No, you really don't.
Just tap into your current network. Look at the contacts in your phone now instead of saying, how do I meet this person, that person? How do I hire this person? Unless you ask, you have no idea if the
100%.
person would be interested in it or if they're too busy or not.
100%.
They could be like, this is an amazing opportunity for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure she felt like that with like illustrating this. That's amazing.
100%. And I'm like, girl, I want to raise enough money on my Kickstarter to pay for you to have a sick honeymoon,
That's awesome.
And I think too, other like big things to take out of this is like, we're so focused on like our differences when it comes to like our beliefs. Like you said, let's focus on our differences when it comes to talents, because I wrote the book, but if Allie didn't illustrate it, it would be nothing. If Arlene in Seattle, the random person I met through Freelancing Females, had she not formatted it, it wouldn't have been a thing.
Wow.
And even though COVID has been especially challenging, I think before COVID, social media was a way for me to like preserve relationships and enhance them.
Right.
But now in COVID, I really recognize my power to actually create new relationships. And leverage those relationships to, in my situation, take a tragedy and really use it to inspire and help other people. And that's the biggest thing with the book is, I really hope it inspires other people to write their own stories. And if that's something that you've been thinking about, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Mari. Because it really isn't hard. And it's you just got to do it.
Just being vulnerable and like sharing. It's all about just doing it. Like this podcast. I was like, I've been wanting to do a podcast for now like 2 years. And I'm like, just fucking do it.
Oh my God, we're the
same. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, all you have to do is download this app and make it. But it's like, I want to share
Shout
the
out
information.
Anchor, we love you.
And it's like, I know so many powerful women, and you were like the first person on my list. When you messaged me, I was like, dude, like you were literally written on my list. Like I have a written list of people that are like my ideal podcast, candidates. And when you messaged me, I was so excited. And like, what I really want to know is how you gain the confidence to leave your like, I don't know if it was salaried or 9-to-5 kind of job to become an entrepreneur. Like, how did that transition happen?
Number one, I knew I was made for more.
Yeah, but you can see that. I feel like you just have that like magnetic personality.
Oh, I appreciate that because I really truthfully, I didn't always see it in myself.
Yeah.
And I won't lie either. Like the first 6 months of me going out on my own, I felt like a total loser. I went from this job where I was always on a plane and, taking pictures on Instagram and all my different outfits and getting all these messages from kids, and here I was sitting on my couch with my cat and like nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't realize it, but I got so much validation from the kids and the parents of the kids that I worked with that when that was gone, I started seeking that in the wrong places. And as a woman, when I look back at it, at the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, I was definitely using some of my gifts for the wrong things. Going out and meeting guys, like those are the same gifts you get going out and meeting clients.
That's
and
true.
I think going through this transition of like a new life in terms of like work and money and what's possible and having to tell people no to things.
Yes.
And like I said, having to finally sit in grief because I was working so hard. I didn't actually grief my dad. I just talked about my dad when I felt like it, in speeches and with the Uber driver.
You didn't grieve it within yourself.
No. And when I tell you that most of this year was like really messy and emotional, like going out on my own, like I didn't realize like how much I had to grow as a woman and a person to develop standards in my personal relationships and to develop standards in my professional relationships, and recognizing that, it's a problem that I used to care about keeping my word to other people more than I did myself.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll never forget in January, I went to this conference by Rachel Hollis, who's sort of like a Tony Robbins for moms. And like, first of all, seeing her on stage in the stadium with like thousands of people was just like so emotional for me, because it was like, I know one day I am going to be like you. And here I am for the last couple of months. I've been so depressed and spiraling and taking on these jobs that I thought were failures at the time, but I realize now have made me a smarter businesswoman, because now I have practices and I know how to profile people. But one of the biggest things was, she was like, okay, I want you to write down every single accomplishment you've ever had, right?
Wow.
And then she started talking about your accomplishments in relations to your health and in your business and in your dating life. And, when I had left the nonprofit world, I had the opportunity to really be going to the gym consistently.
Okay.
Because before that, I would work out when I was home, but then when I was back on the road, I was like, I wasn't eating well. I wouldn't really work out. I was going out a lot. And I had managed to like lose 30 pounds and keep the 30 pounds off.
Right.
Once I, was able to keep going to the gym regularly by myself. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized, holy shit, I have never once acknowledged to myself, you actually lost weight this time and kept it off, and you have a healthy lifestyle now where like you don't binge eat, you do eat clean. And then when I looked at my list of all these accomplishments, I was like, dude, you might be going through a rough season right now. Sometimes in life, you got to take a couple steps back in order to redesign, propel yourself forward. But when you literally look at all these things that you have done as someone who's 27 years old, like you are not ever allowed to say to yourself that like you are not successful.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. That's like a huge turning point to like really realize that in yourself.
Yeah. And I love like empowering teens to like make them do that too, because a lot of times they have to go to their parents and be like, Mom and Dad, like, what are my biggest accomplishments?
Right. What are my values? What do I bring to the table?
And a big thing of confidence is having courage, and the courage doesn't come from your parents. Like the courage comes from you.
The courage comes from your parents saying, get out there and like figure it out.
Yeah.
Instead of them holding your hand, it's like, what can you do without that support?
Exactly. And how we talk to ourselves as women is so important, because when I was at that conference, there was this like segment where it was like, okay, turn to the woman next to you and turn to the other woman next to you and talk about how you talk to yourself. And like, I won't lie. Sometimes I look in the mirror, I'm like, okay, your stomach could be a little flatter, like you are looking a little cellulite in the thighs, maybe do like some rollerblading, but like that's about the extent. Or like you have a pimple.
Right.
When I tell you that I met women like twice, 3 times our age who, and this was most women in the arena, who look in the mirror and they're like, you're so fat, why did you even try? You're such a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Like, I was bawling when I heard how all these women talk to themselves, and I'm talking about thousands of women, like you could hear it in the room. And Mari, when I left, I called my mom and I said, thank you so much for raising me the way that I did, because I know the reason that I don't have negative self-talk, which is what they call that, is just because of how like you reinforced me my whole life. Like, I never understood why my mom was always like, you have to be independent, you have to be independent. But now as a 28-year-old,
and
you get it.
It's when you're taught that every day, because I was the same way. My mom was like,
you almost think it's annoying. You're like, okay.
But it becomes your persona, because it's like, that's all I know is to be independent. And even, I'm married, and Steven the other day was like, how does it feel to know that you're like never going to be alone? And I'm like, that has never even crossed my mind. Like, I just can't even fathom not being independent and not having my own like life, even separate from my family. Like, I feel like my work is like my life. Like, it just is my kind of persona.
Right.
And it's just interesting to realize that in yourself and be like, listen, I have everything that I need within me.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's like doing that negative self-talk. You're just basically shitting on all of your own values and all that you bring to the table, because nobody's seeing what you see in the mirror. They're seeing your values. Typically, if they're a good person, they're seeing the positives in you. And if they're not, and if they're one of those people that's like gonna rip you apart and say, oh, look at her shoes, oh, look at that. That, to me, I've always, like, whenever I see somebody doing that, it's like, what is going on in your head that's what you're focusing on?
Exactly.
That you're focusing on that girl's hair, or you're focusing on her weight or whatever, when you don't have your shit together.
Exactly.
And that is a clear picture of somebody who doesn't have their shit together if you're focusing on that kind of stuff. And it's like, you're listening to these women and how they talk to themselves, and you're in awe, like you can't even believe that that's what they thought, because you would never look at them and think that.
Right.
So that's like a power that you have, is to see the good in people and like see things past the exterior.
Right.
And that negative self-talk, I think a lot of it is only focusing on the exterior and not focusing on what I already have. And like, there's so much about achieving now, like where it's like, it's almost too much. Like everybody's like, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be this, you have to be that. It's like, what do you already have? Like, how can you be the best asset of where you work currently?
Right.
Like, how can you be the best mom that you can be? How can you be the best wife, or whatever is really important to you?
Exactly.
Like, find out what's important to you, and then realize why it is you're good at this, and this, and then hone in on those positives.
Exactly.
You know?
And put it into something that is going to lift you up. Like, for ladies who feel like, you're loving like all of these jerks, like, you are the love. Instead of putting love into a man that's not going to get back to you, put that love into you. It's not just about how we talk to ourselves, but it's about our behaviors. Like, if we're putting them into people, into places that aren't serving us, we just need to redirect where we're putting that energy, because there's only so much of us to go around.
100%.
And if you put yourself in the wrong places, then you're only going to continue to go down the wrong paths. And, it was so funny, like, for me, when I look back to where I was a year ago, I was the fittest I'd ever been. My body was so tight. There was no cellular, because I was working out every day for like 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours.
Right.
But that was when I was like the most fucked up on the inside, because I was like, how am I going to make money? Like, what's my job situation? Like, let me chase these guys. And like, it's kind of like exactly what you pointed out. Like, I really wasn't putting myself first. I was putting this like false sense of like the exterior, like that part of the perfection, like, and
what you think you should be, or what you think you should have accomplished by now, or what. And what you were saying too about writing down your accomplishments, it's like, what we don't realize is that your accomplishments can be in so many different aspects of your life.
Oh my God, yes.
I'm thinking about it now, thinking, what would I put on my accomplishment list? And like, I wouldn't even think first and foremost to put anything about working out, or it's like, whatever is you've got to like realize that being a well-rounded person comes with accomplishing a lot of different things in different aspects of your life that all tie into the main goal.
Yeah, and they balance. If you're messed up in your personal life, you're going to be super messed up in your professional life.
Right.
The only reason like I'm seeing a lot more success now is, I had to do that really hard work.
It's true.
And COVID made it even harder, but that's what's made the reward now, oh my God, just so much more
better.
Successful, because it's like, I continue to surprise myself. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm confident and I know I'm going places, but still, You
like exude confidence to me. I just feel like you're one of those people that's just like, I know who I am, and you do love to give compliments, and I noticed that when I met you. I was like, she is so like gassing everybody else up that's here. Like, she is like, you look amazing, you look fucking hot, you look great. Well, like, everybody else is like worried about like their own selves and how they look and whatever, and you're just like giving everybody confidence, but then you stand out because you're totally like have a different vibe than everybody else in the room, you know, like you're attracting that energy and you're the person that people are going to remember because you're like creating that happy space that people want to be around, you know?
I love that.
It's amazing.
I love that.
And what you were saying too about where your focus is. I mean, I think the number one thing that I notice in a lot of women, like when I did medical sales, was a lot of focusing so much on like their relationships or a guy or how they affected them and, oh, he didn't text me back, blah, blah. All of that time could be spent going after your goals. Like that is taking so much time and energy out of your day to be worrying about when the guy's going to text you back. Like who gives a shit?
Exactly. There's a difference between looking good and feeling good.
Right.
And wanting to like get somebody to text you back. That's looking good.
Yeah.
You know, for me, for people who know me the last 8 years, like I wear sneakers everywhere.
Right.
I wear them to weddings, I wear them to work, and because when I feel good, I'm a lot more confident.
Right.
Like I don't mind wearing heels sometimes, but like most times I'd rather feel good than fucking look good.
Exactly. And people, you would be surprised at how much people care more about what you're bringing to the table than what you look like when you bring it to the table.
Like when I was younger, some of my most wildest nights were the nights where I had no makeup, where I had no bra on, I didn't expect for an adventure.
I'm telling you, one of the best tips that I learned just through experience. Okay, Raina, so you are an entrepreneur, now an author, and a motivational speaker. So what I want to know is, because we're about to meet with her, is your mentor. Now when you told me you have a mentor, I was like, wait a second. This bitch has her shit together. She's an entrepreneur. She's like always doing stuff. Why and how does she have a mentor? Tell me how that came about.
Totally. It's really funny because sometimes my mentor, who I call Legally Pam,
here's a little muffin to go with this.
Thank you. It's funny. Sometimes she tells me that I mentor her. She sent me this.
I'm sure you do.
She sent me this meme a couple weeks ago that was like, anybody over 50 who doesn't have a mentor under 30, they're missing out on fundamental changes in thinking.
Wow.
And I thought that was so funny.
That's like a very good and succinct way of saying it, because they can learn just as much from you as you can learn from somebody that's wise and has a lot under their belt, because you are living a totally different life right now than they did.
And, there's so many people I've met in my life who I get advice from and I've really grown to love. But I have to say, she's probably like one of the first people in my life who I've ever actually looked at and said, like, this is my mentor. Just because she has so much pride in her values and what she brings to work. Like, I've never seen her come to a business meeting without a present. Like, the way that she treats people. It's crazy. Like, I learned so much just from how she reads body behavior before people even say anything. I'm sure, like, you probably have some overlap with that sometimes, like when showing houses, but things that I would never notice. And I think the biggest piece of advice Pam ever gave me was that, people, when people pay me, they're not just paying for the documents I create, they're paying for my time and the way that I do things and my past experiences and my makeup that I put on before I got here.
Right.
So, like, don't ever let anybody, like, underpay you or tell you that you're not worth your value. And it's funny because when I first met her, I was at this event and I was wearing one black shoe and one white shoe, and everybody was complimenting me on my shoes, and they're like, do you know Pam? Do you know Pam? And I'm like, who is Pam? You know? And then finally I met this woman and I complimented her shoes, and she's like, oh my God, thanks, I'm Pam. I'm like, you're Pam? I'm like,
you're the Pam.
Yeah, I'm like, everybody's been like wanting me to meet you all night. And for the listeners, like, the way that I do my nails, like, every nail is always different. And when Pam saw my nails, she literally threw her boot off and like put her foot in my face and showed me that her pedicure is exactly like my manicure.
Wow.
And so it was funny, before COVID, I kind of became her plus one to a lot of events. I'll tell you a really funny story. Sorry, Pam, I don't think I've ever even told you this story before, but my last name is Exelbeard. And I remember one time Pam had taken me to this one event, and Pam is so amazing. She, was introducing me to everybody at this event, but she was introducing me as Raina Axelrod and not Exelbeard. And I wasn't going to
I like
correct
that,
her.
though.
I wasn't going to correct her. We were in like this big, like important situation. This is like when we had first started hanging out. And I remember this one guy looked at me. He's like, "Are you related to Daniel Axelrod?" And I sat there and pretended for 7 seconds. I was like, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Now I work for her law firm and I'm on all her documents. She certainly knows how to like read and say my name.
Right.
What's really funny is just because of COVID and her living 10 minutes away, not only have I, gone from being her plus one to helping her with her nonprofit and helping her with legal stuff, but to like really becoming like really close friends who like go on walks multiple times a week. And
That's
I know
amazing. You guys are like gonna go get a pedicure today?
Oh yeah, that's like our thing. And what you were saying earlier about being successful in the different parts of our lives, I'm really lucky that Pam knows like all the different parts of Raina, and I never have to like hide any part of myself
or explain why you're doing something the way you're doing it.
And I think for somebody older, it's refreshing to like just to have somebody who's like honest and vulnerable and like really like wants to know stuff.
Yeah, and I think like what you're saying, somebody that knows every aspect about you is amazing, because it's hard to work with people when you're trying to explain who you are and explain to everybody what your mission is and why you're doing something the way you're doing it. It's like for somebody to inherently like understand your mission and your growth and your trajectory
and promote the
priceless.
Shit out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody promotes me better than Legally Pam.
Exactly. If I meet somebody where I'm like, I want to promote your product, like even if it's a house, I'm like, I need to know everything I need to, like everything about it, to be able to present it in the best way.
It's so funny you say that. I hope the guy doesn't hear this, but when you're an entrepreneur, you take on different jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about beer, but recently I took on this side job where I go into liquor stores and I demo beer. I maybe also bring my book also with me, but that's another topic. But I know nothing about beer, and when I first started the job, I like said to the guy like, "Hey, let's meet up." And like, you tell me about the beer.
Yeah.
And everything you told me about the beer was anecdotal and storial, like a story and like funny facts, things that you would never see on a website, things that you would never see on social media, things you would never see on a beer sheet. Like, and when I sell the beer in the store, I'm only selling those things I found out from him. Exactly.
Yeah, because it's making it like a human experience rather than just a beer. It's like, tell me more about the background. And I think that's why people love podcasts so much, because it's like the person, what they're giving off, but you don't know what their why, or how it came, what the journey was to get to that point, which is amazing. That's half the interest.
And it's okay not to know. Sometimes I'm sitting behind the beer and they're like, which one's the IPA? And I'm like, I'm not actually sure which one is the IPA. And they laugh and they'll show me. I'll be like, oh, thank you so much for teaching me.
All three and tell me which one.
And a lot of times they still buy it because I'm like, thank you for educating me.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
it's
it
my first
creates
day.
a conversation. It makes you charming. Like it doing things so perfect all the time. I mean, I'll tell you, I took a client to a showing the other day, and every time we tried to make a joke or go off track, she's like, okay, and back to the floor plan, and back to the floor plan. I'm like, bitch, everybody knows what a kitchen looks like. Everybody knows where the bathroom is. Like, it is a relationship business, and like, even if you don't think that you're
everything in life is a relationship business. Your family is a relationship business.
Yes.
The way you raise your children, the way you interact with people at work,
and that's why your impressions are so
drive
important.
And treat people on the road. Like,
that's true.
If I'm not in a hurry, fine, I'll let everybody else go first. I don't care.
Exactly. Exactly. I have a little bit of road rage, so I can't say I'm so okay with that one. But I'm so excited that we got to sit down and talk. Like,
totally.
If there's any, because you give really good advice. Like, I feel like you make it in such a succinct sentence that a lot of people are not able to do. So what is like one succinct sentence that would give a message of motivation and inspiration for people out there right now?
Totally. I would just say, when one grows, we all grow. If you can't work on yourself that day, work on supporting somebody else, whether it's one of those small things we said, like sending a text or making a note, or whether it's like doing something big. But it certainly doesn't take anything big to make a difference.
That's true.
And just recognize with growth that you just have to be consistent every day.
Yes.
And some days you might put in a couple minutes, some days you might have the opportunity to put in more hours, but as long as you're putting seeds down every single day, eventually those seeds grow, and even flowers need shit to grow. So if you're in a really bad place right now, that was like my first half of the I guess like 2019 or the last half of 2019, and I get it, and I've been there. If you're going through a good time, you know, that's kind of been, I feel bad saying in the pandemic I'm in a good time, but sometimes it's our biggest challenges that ultimately inspire our biggest blessings. And
It's true.
You know, the rockier the soil, the sweeter the grapes, the better the wine. So just don't let anybody dimmer your shimmer. Keep growing, and we're proud of you.
I love that, dimmer your shimmer. And we are proud of you. We're proud of everyone listening. If you listen to anything on this podcast, it would be that last 20 seconds, because that was a really good group of like a million good things to take with you today. So I'm so happy that we got to share this information with you. Please go and pick up The Girl Who Said Hello to Everyone. And here's a good tip for today. Say hello to at least 5 people today, and maybe shoot them a compliment and see how it improves your day and who you can connect with along the way. Thank you for listening, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Killed it.